Captain Jake Morrison walked slowly across the bridge of the USS Vanguard. The ship was huge and powerful, one of the best ships that humans had ever built. It had been flying through space for 3 weeks now, looking for new planets and checking on the outer edges of human territory. The mission was supposed to be simple and boring, just like all the other patrol missions Jake had done before. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. Jake looked out at the stars through the big window at the front of the bridge. Space looked the same as always, black and empty, with tiny dots of light scattered everywhere. He had been a captain for 15 years, and sometimes he still felt amazed by how big and mysterious space was. Lisa Carter sat at the communications station, wearing her blue uniform with the Earth Federation symbol on the shoulder. She had been listening to radio signals from space for the past hour, but there was nothing interesting. Most of the time, the radio was completely silent. Sometimes they would hear signals from other human ships or from the colonies, but today, everything was quiet. Jake was thinking about having lunch when Lisa suddenly sat up straight in her chair. She put her hand on her earpiece and listened carefully. Her face changed from bored to worried in just a few seconds. "Captain," Lisa said, turning around to look at Jake. Her voice sounded different now, more serious. "I think I'm picking up something strange." Jake walked over to Lisa's station. The communications console had lots of buttons and screens that showed different types of radio waves. Most of the screens showed flat lines, which meant there were no signals. But one screen was different. It showed a pattern that kept repeating, over and over again. "What is it?" Jake asked, looking at the pattern on the screen. "It's a distress signal, sir," Lisa said. She pressed some buttons to make the signal clearer. "It's very weak, but it's definitely following the standard SOS pattern that all human ships use." Jake felt his stomach tighten. A distress signal meant that somewhere out there, people were in trouble. Maybe their ship was broken, or maybe they were hurt, or maybe something even worse had happened to them. "Where is it coming from?" Jake asked. Lisa worked on her computer for a few minutes, checking the signal and trying to figure out where it was coming from. "The signal is coming from the Kepler 442 system, sir. That's about 2 days away from here if we go at full speed." Jake thought about this. The Kepler 442 system was not on any of the regular travel routes. As far as he knew, no human ships were supposed to be there. All the official maps said that system was empty, with no planets that humans could live on. "Are you sure about the location?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. I've checked it 3 times. The signal is definitely coming from Kepler 442. Jake walked over to another station where Ryan Webb was working. Ryan was the ship's science officer, a smart man who knew a lot about space and planets and alien life. He had thick glasses and always looked like he was thinking about something complicated. "Ryan, I need you to look at something," Jake said. Ryan looked up from his work. "What can I do for you, Captain?" Lisa picked up a distress signal from the Kepler 442 system. "Can you analyze it and tell me what you think?" Ryan got up and walked over to Lisa's station. He looked at the screens and listened to the signal through a pair of headphones. After a few minutes, he started typing on the computer, running different tests on the signal. "This is very interesting," Ryan said, still looking at the computer screen. "The signal contains more than just the basic SOS pattern. There's additional data encoded in the transmission." "What kind of data?" Jake asked. Ryan worked on the computer for several more minutes. His face became more and more serious as he found new information in the signal. "Captain, this signal contains human identification codes," Ryan said, "and biometric data, things like heartbeat patterns and brain wave readings. This is definitely from a human ship." Jake felt worried now. If there were humans in trouble in a system that was supposed to be empty, it meant something bad had happened? Can you identify which ship sent the signal? Jake asked. Ryan typed more commands into the computer. The screen showed lots of numbers and letters that Jake couldn't understand, but Ryan knew what they meant. "Oh my God," Ryan said quietly. His face went white. "Captain, these identification codes belong to the research vessel Horizon." Jake felt like someone had hit him in the stomach. He knew about the Horizon. Every captain in the fleet knew about the Horizon. The ship had disappeared 3 years ago, with 200 people on board. They had been on a research mission to study new planets, but they never came back. The fleet had searched for months, but they never found any trace of the ship or the people. "Are you absolutely sure?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. The codes match perfectly. This signal is coming from the Horizon." Commander Amy Price heard the conversation and walked over to join them. Amy was Jake's second in command, a tough woman who had been in the fleet for 20 years. She was good at her job and never got scared, but now she looked worried too. "Captain, if the Horizon is still out there, we need to help them," Amy said. "Those people have been missing for 3 years. Their families think they're dead." Jake nodded. He was thinking about all the families on Earth and the colonies who had cried for their lost loved ones. If there was even a small chance that some of those people were still alive, he had to try to save them. "Lisa, how long would it take us to reach the Kepler 442 system?" Jake asked. "At maximum speed, about 36 hours, sir," Lisa answered. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people who had families of their own. Taking the ship into an unknown system could be dangerous. But Jake knew what he had to do. "Set course for Kepler 442, Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." "Yes, sir," said the pilot, and the ship began to turn toward the source of the mysterious signal dot as the Vanguard flew through space toward the unknown system. Jake couldn't stop thinking about the Horizon and the 200 people who had disappeared. What had happened to them? Why were they sending a distress signal now, after 3 years? And why were they in a system that was supposed to be empty? He had a bad feeling that they were about to discover something terrible. The Vanguard flew through space for 2 long days. Captain Jake Morrison did not sleep well during those 2 days. He kept thinking about the Horizon and what they might find when they reached the Kepler 442 system. His crew was nervous too. Everyone knew the story of the missing ship and the 200 people who had vanished without a trace. When they finally arrived at the Kepler 442 system, Ryan Webb started scanning the area with the ship's powerful sensors. The system had a yellow, star-like Earth's sun, but the planets were all dead rocks with no air to breathe. It seemed like an empty, lonely place. "Captain, I'm detecting something," Ryan said, looking at his computer screen. "There's a large object hiding behind one of the asteroids. It's definitely a ship, and it's big enough to be the Horizon." Jake felt his heart beating faster. "Can you tell if there are any life signs?" Ryan worked on his computer for several minutes, trying to get a clear reading. "The ship's hull is badly damaged, but I am detecting some very weak life signs. Someone is still alive over there." "How many people?" asked Commander Amy Price. "I can't tell for sure because of all the damage to their ship, but it looks like maybe 10 or 15 people at most," Ryan answered. Jake felt sad when he heard this. The Horizon had carried 200 people when it disappeared. If only 10 or 15 were still alive, that meant almost everyone was dead. "Prepare a boarding party," Jake ordered. "I want our best security team ready to go over there. We don't know what we'll find." Security Chief Danny Foster was a big, strong man who had been a soldier before joining the fleet. He picked 12 of his best people to go with him to the Horizon. They all wore special spacesuits and carried weapons, just in case there was danger. Lisa Carter stayed in contact with the boarding party as they flew over to the damaged ship in a small shuttle. The horizon looked terrible. There were big holes in the side of the ship, and burn marks covered the hull. It looked like the ship had been in a fight. Danny and his team entered the horizon through an airlock that was still working. Inside, the ship was dark and cold. Their flashlights showed broken walls and floors covered with strange stains. There were burn marks everywhere, like someone had been shooting energy weapons inside the ship. "Captain, you need to see this." Danny's voice came through the radio. "The corridors are full of what looks like barricades. Someone built walls and barriers all through the ship, like they were trying to hide from something." Jake listened as Danny described what they were. Finding, the boarding party moved slowly through the ship, checking each room carefully. Many of the rooms were empty, but they were not empty in a normal way. It looked like people had been taken away suddenly, leaving their personal things behind. "We found the medical bay," Danny reported. "There's someone here." The medical bay was at the center of the ship. When Danny's team entered, they found medical equipment scattered everywhere. In the corner of the room was a strange metal box that looked like a coffin. The box was making a soft humming sound. "It's some kind of medical stasis pod," said one of Danny's men who knew about medical equipment. "Someone is inside." They carefully opened the pod and found a woman inside. She was very thin and weak, and her hair was white, even though she looked like she should be young. Her eyes opened slowly when the light hit her face. "Please," she whispered, "don't let them take me again." Danny and his team were very gentle as they moved the woman to their shuttle and brought her back to the Vanguard. Jake waited in the medical bay while their doctor, Greg Miller, examined her. "She's badly malnourished and dehydrated," Dr. Miller said. "She's been in that stasis pod for a long time, maybe months, but she should recover." The woman's name was Dr. Susan Clark, and she had been the chief medical officer on the horizon. When she was strong enough to talk, she told them a story that made everyone feel sick with anger. "We were exploring a planet in this system when they came," Dr. Clark said, her voice shaking. "Ships appeared out of nowhere. They were alien ships, unlike anything we had ever seen. They attacked us without warning." Jake sat next to her bed and listened carefully. "Who were they? What did they want?" "They called themselves the Krillian Empire," Dr. Clark continued. "They captured our ship and took all of us prisoner. They said we were now their property to do with as they pleased." Dr. Clark's story got worse and worse as she continued talking. The aliens had taken the humans to different places. Some were forced to work as slaves in mines on dead planets. Others were used for medical experiments, having their bodies changed in terrible ways. But the worst thing, Dr. Clark said, tears running down her face, was what they did for entertainment. They forced us to fight each other in arena battles while they watched and cheered. They separated families and made parents watch their children suffer. Amy Price had to leave the room because she was so angry. Jake felt his hands making fists as he listened to Dr. Clark's story. "They didn't just want to kill us," Dr. Clark whispered. "They wanted to break our spirits. They wanted to prove that humans were nothing more than animals for their amusement. They broadcast the fights to other planets, showing the galaxy how weak and helpless we were." Dr. Clark told them that the aliens had put devices in their brains to control their emotions and memories. Many humans had been changed so much that they didn't even remember who they were anymore. "How did you escape?" Jake asked. "I didn't escape," Dr. Clark said. "Captain Paul Roberts managed to get me back to the ship before he died. He put me in the stasis pod and activated the distress beacon. He recorded a message for Earth before the aliens found him. Greg Miller found the message in the ship's computer system. Captain Roberts appeared on the screen, badly injured and dying, but still determined to get word back to Earth. 'Tell them what happened to us,' Roberts said in the recording. "Tell them about the Krillian Empire and what they do to prisoners. Don't let our suffering be for nothing. Make them pay for what they did to us." When the message ended, the medical bay was completely silent. Jake looked around at his crew and saw the same expression on every face. It was an expression of pure, cold anger. The aliens had made a terrible mistake. They thought they were showing the galaxy that humans were weak. Instead, they had just shown humanity exactly what kind of enemy they were dealing with. And now humanity would respond. The news spread across human space faster than anyone had ever seen before. Captain Jake Morrison sent his report to Earth Fleet Command as soon as Dr. Susan Clark finished telling her story. Within hours, every human colony, every space station, and every ship in the fleet knew what had happened to the Horizon. Admiral Steve Parker was eating breakfast in his office on Earth when he received Jake's message. He was an old man who had served in the fleet for 40 years, and he had seen many terrible things during his career. But when he watched Captain Roberts's final message and heard Dr. Clark's testimony, he felt something he had never felt before. It was a cold, burning anger that seemed to fill his whole body. Steve immediately called for an emergency meeting of the Colonial Council. Representatives from every human world were contacted and told to come to Earth as quickly as possible. This was not a normal government meeting where people argued about taxes and trade routes. This was something much more serious. The Colonial Council met in a large building in Geneva, the same city where the United Nations used to meet centuries ago. Delegates came from Mars, from the mining colonies around Jupiter, from the farming worlds near Alpha Centauri, and from dozens of other human settlements scattered across the galaxy. Senator Kate Johnson was one of the first people to speak at the emergency meeting. Kate had always believed that humans should explore space peacefully and make friends with any aliens they met. She had spent years arguing against building more military ships, saying that humanity should focus on science and diplomacy instead of weapons. But when Kate stood up to address the council, her face was wet with tears and her voice was shaking with anger. "My friends," she said, looking around the room at all the other delegates, "I have always believed that we should go to the stars with open hearts and peaceful intentions. I still believe that. But what happened to the crew of the Horizon was not an act of war. It was an act of pure evil." Kate's voice got stronger as she continued speaking. "We sent 200 brave people to explore new worlds and learn new things. They went out there with hope in their hearts and wonder in their eyes. And these aliens, these Krillians, they took our people and tortured them for entertainment. They treated human beings like animals in a zoo." The room was completely silent as Kate spoke. Every person in the council chamber was listening to her words and thinking about the families who had lost their loved ones. "This cannot stand," Kate said, her voice now loud and clear. "We cannot let this evil go unpunished. We cannot let other species think that humans are weak prey that can be hunted and captured without consequences." Dr. Linda Brooks was the next person to speak. Linda was Earth's most famous expert on alien psychology, and she had spent years studying how different species thought and behaved. She had been working all night to analyze everything they knew about the Krillian Empire. "Based on what Dr. Clark has told us," Linda said, "the Krillians see humans as an inferior species. They believe we exist only to serve them or to provide them with entertainment. This is not a misunderstanding that can be solved with diplomacy. This is how they truly think about us." Linda showed the council computer images and data that her team had gathered. "Our intelligence reports suggest that the Krillians have been watching human expansion into space for many years. They have been waiting for the right moment to begin what they call harvesting, capturing humans for slavery and experimentation. The worst news came from General Alex Carter, who was in charge of colonial military operations. Alex was a tough soldier who had fought in several small wars between human colonies, but even he looked sick as he presented his report. "We have reason to believe that the Horizon was not the only ship that was captured," Alex said. "Over the past 10 years, 17 human colonies have gone silent without explanation. We assumed they were destroyed by natural disasters or equipment failures. Now we think they were all taken by the Krillians." The room erupted in angry voices as the delegates realized what this meant. Thousands of humans might still be alive, suffering in alien prison camps scattered across the galaxy. Families who had mourned their dead relatives for years might still have hope of seeing them again. Commander Nick Davis, who worked for Colonial Intelligence, had even more disturbing information. "Our deep space reconnaissance has identified what appear to be Krillian processing facilities on 17 different worlds. These facilities are heavily defended and appear to be designed for holding large numbers of prisoners." Nick showed satellite images of the alien facilities on a large screen. The buildings looked like factories, but they were surrounded by walls and guard towers. "Based on the size of these facilities, we estimate that the Krillians may be holding between 50,000 and 100,000 human prisoners." When the delegates heard this number, many of them started crying. Others began shouting angrily, demanding immediate military action against the aliens. President Helen Morris had been listening quietly to all the reports and testimony. Helen was the elected leader of all human colonies, and it was her job to make the final decision about how humanity would respond to this crisis. She was a small woman with gray hair, but when she stood up to speak, everyone in the room felt the power and authority in her voice. "My fellow humans," President Morris said, "we came to the stars with dreams of peace and discovery. We hoped to find new homes for our children and new friends among the stars. We never wanted to be conquerors or warriors." She paused and looked around the room, making eye contact with delegates from every human world. "But the Krillian Empire has forced us to become something we never wanted to be. They have attacked our people, enslaved our families, and treated us like animals. They have shown us that there is true evil in this galaxy, and that evil must be stopped." President Morris's voice became louder and more forceful. The Krillians thought they were harvesting weak prey. They thought humans would be easy victims who would submit quietly to slavery and torture. They were wrong. The president walked to the center of the room so that everyone could see her clearly. "We are no longer explorers," she declared. "We are no longer peaceful colonists looking for new homes. We are liberators. We are the force that will free every human prisoner and destroy every Krillian facility. We are the army that will make sure no other species ever again suffers what our people have suffered." The Colonial Council voted unanimously to declare war on the Krillian Empire. For the first time in human history, every colony, every world, and every settlement agreed on something completely. They would fight together until every human prisoner was free, and every Krillian facility was destroyed. As the delegates prepared to return to their worlds and begin mobilizing for war, President Morris made one final statement that would be remembered for generations. "The Krillians wanted to show the galaxy that humans are weak," she said. "Instead, they are about to learn what happens when you threaten the family of a species that refuses to abandon its own." The war was about to begin. The war began 3 weeks after the Colonial Council meeting. Admiral Chris Powell led the first attack force, which consisted of 50 of humanity's most powerful warships. Chris was a calm, smart commander who had never lost a battle in his 20-year career. But this war was different from any he had fought before. This time, he was not fighting for territory or resources. He was fighting to save human lives. The first target was a Krillian facility on a planet called Vega Prime. Intelligence reports said this facility held about 3,000 human prisoners. who were being used as slaves in underground mines. The facility was heavily defended with plasma cannons and energy shields, but the humans had a secret weapon that the aliens did not know about. Dr. Gary Stone had been working for 5 years on a new type of weapon system in a secret laboratory. On Mars, Gary was a brilliant scientist who had studied alien technology captured from previous encounters. His new weapons could punch through any known alien defense system like it was made of paper. The Krillians think they understand our technology. Gary had told Admiral Powell before the attack. They have been watching us for years, and they think they know what our weapons can do. They are about to learn that they have been watching the wrong things. The human attack on Vega Prime lasted only 6 hours. Captain Ellen White led a squadron of stealth ships that approached the planet without being detected. These ships were painted black and designed to be invisible to alien sensors. They got close to the planet's surface before the Krillians even knew they were there. When the attack began, the Krillian defenders were completely surprised. Their energy shields, which had protected them for centuries, were destroyed in the first few minutes. Their plasma cannons, which could destroy normal human ships, could barely scratch the new armor that Gary's team had developed. But the most important part of the attack was led by Colonel Brad Murphy and his special forces teams. Brad was a soldier who had trained his whole life for missions like this one. His job was to get inside the prison facility and rescue the human prisoners while the fleet kept the alien defenders busy. Brad and his men landed on the planet's surface in small, fast ships that could avoid the alien defenses. They wore special armor that protected them from energy weapons and allowed them to move quickly through the facility's corridors. Inside the prison, Brad's team found conditions that were even worse than Dr. Clark had described. The human prisoners were kept in small, dark cells with barely enough food and water to stay alive. Many of them were sick and injured from years of hard labor in the mines, but the worst discovery was in the facility's main building. The Krillians had built what they called entertainment center, where they forced human prisoners to fight each other while alien spectators watched and cheered. The floor of the arena was stained with human blood, and the walls were covered with pictures of previous fights. "Get everyone out of here," Brad ordered his men through his radio. "I want every single human prisoner on our ships in the next 2 hours." The rescue operation was completed faster than anyone had expected. The human prisoners, many of whom had not seen other free humans for years, cried with joy when they saw Brad's soldiers. Some of them could barely walk because they had been kept in chains for so long. As the human fleet prepared to leave Vega Prime, Admiral Powell made a decision that would become standard practice for the rest of the war. Instead of just rescuing the prisoners and leaving, he ordered his ships to completely destroy the Krillian facility. "We are not just here to rescue our people," Powell announced to his fleet. "We are here to make sure that no other species ever suffers in places like this. Burn it all down." The success at Vega Prime was broadcast across human space within hours. The news that 3,000 human prisoners had been freed sparked celebrations on every human world. But more importantly, it brought thousands of volunteers to military recruitment centers. People who had never considered joining the military suddenly wanted to be part of the war effort. Farmers left their fields, teachers left their schools, and workers left their factories to enlist in the fleet. Even elderly people who were too old to fight found ways to help by building ships and weapons. The human fleet grew larger after every victory. Civilian ships were quickly converted into military vessels using new weapons and armor systems. Cargo ships became troop transports, and passenger ships became mobile hospitals for rescued prisoners. Captain Janet Hayes became famous throughout human space for her brilliant tactical victories against Krillian fleets. Janet was a young woman who who had graduated from the Naval Academy only 5 years earlier, but she had a natural talent for space combat that amazed her superiors in the Battle of Rigel Station. Janet commanded a small squadron of 12 ships against a Krillian fleet of 40 vessels. According to all military textbooks, the humans should have been destroyed quickly. Instead, Janet used a combination of speed, stealth, and superior firepower to completely destroy the alien fleet without losing a single human ship. The key to beating the Krillians, Janet explained to other commanders, is to never fight the kind of battle they expect. They have been the strongest military force in the galaxy for so long that they think every battle will be fought according to their rules. We have to show them that humans make their own rules. Each victory brought more intelligence about the scope of the Krillian Empire, the number of human prisoners being held. The aliens had facilities on over 100 worlds, and they had been capturing humans for much longer than anyone had realized. Dr. Carl Reed, working with freed prisoners, discovered that the Krillians had been broadcasting their torture sessions to other alien species across the galaxy. They used the recordings as propaganda, showing other species what would happen to them if they resisted Krillian expansion. They have been using our people's suffering as a weapon of terror, Dr. Reed reported to military command. Every species in this part of the galaxy has seen videos of humans being tortured and killed. They think we are weak because of what the Krillians have done to us. This discovery made the human military leaders even more determined to win the war completely. It was not enough to just rescue the prisoners. They had to show the galaxy that humans were not the weak victims that the Krillian propaganda portrayed. The turning point came when human forces captured a Krillian communication station. The facility contained records of every prison camp, every facility, and every operation the aliens had conducted over the past 50 years. The humans now knew exactly where all their people were being held. More importantly, they discovered the location of the Krillian homeworld. The planet was called Krillos, and it was protected by the largest and most powerful fleet in the galaxy. For 1,000 years, no enemy had ever threatened the Krillian homeworld. Admiral Powell called a meeting of all human fleet commanders to plan the final assault. "We have rescued over 50,000 of our people," he told them. "But there are still thousands more in camps throughout their empire. And as long as the Krillian government exists, they will continue to capture and torture innocent beings." The plan for the attack on Krillos was simple but massive. Every available human ship would participate in the assault. The entire human military, from the smallest patrol vessel to the largest battleship, would converge on the alien homeworld. "We are not just going to defeat them," Admiral Powell announced. "We are going to end them completely. The Krillian Empire will cease to exist, and every species in the galaxy will know that humans protect their own." As the huge human fleet assembled for the final battle, soldiers and civilians throughout human space watched the preparations on their television screens. Everyone knew that this would be the most important battle in human history. The Krillians had awakened something in humanity that they could not understand and could not defeat. They had turned a peaceful exploring species into an army of liberation that would not stop until justice was done. The final battle for the Krillian homeworld began on a Tuesday morning, Earth time. Admiral Chris Powell stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked out at the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. 300 ships of all sizes surrounded the planet Krillos, blocking every escape route the aliens might try to use. The Krillian homeworld was a dark, ugly planet covered with massive cities and industrial facilities. For over 1,000 years, this world had been the center of an empire that terrorized dozens of other species. Today, that empire would end forever. "All ships, this is Admiral Powell," Chris announced over the fleet communication system. "Today we finish what the Krillians started when they captured the horizon. Today we make sure that no other innocent beings will ever suffer in their prison camps. Attack! The battle was swift and devastating. The Krillian home fleet was the largest and most powerful military force in the galaxy, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity. The aliens had become comfortable and lazy after centuries of easy victories against weaker species. They expected their enemies to fight the same old-fashioned battles that had worked for 1,000 years. The humans fought differently. Captain Janet Hayes led the first attack wave using tactics that the Krillians had never seen before. Her ships moved in complex patterns that confused the alien commanders and made their weapons miss their targets. When the Krillians tried to surround the human ships, Janet's forces simply scattered and attacked from completely different directions. Within 4 hours, the entire Krillian home fleet was destroyed. Not a single alien ship escaped the battle. The humans had lost only 12 vessels, and most of their crews had been rescued by other ships. With their space defenses gone, the planet itself was helpless. But Admiral Powell did not order an immediate attack on the surface. Instead, he sent a message to the Krillian government. "This is Admiral Powell of the Human Liberation Fleet," the message said. "We demand the immediate and unconditional surrender of all Krillian forces throughout the galaxy. We demand the release of every human prisoner in your empire. You have 1 hour to respond." The response came from Emperor Voss, the supreme leader of the Krillian Empire. Emperor Voss was an ancient alien who had ruled his people for over 300 years. He had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved millions of beings from different species. He had never been defeated in battle, and he could not believe that a species as young as humanity had destroyed his entire fleet. "Human Admiral," Emperor Voss said in his reply message, "you have won this battle, but you cannot destroy our entire empire. We are willing to negotiate. We will return your prisoners in exchange for a peace treaty that recognizes our territorial claims." Admiral Powell's response was immediate and final. "There will be no negotiations. There will be no treaties. There will be justice." The assault on the planet's surface began immediately. Colonel Brad Murphy led 10,000 human soldiers in the largest military landing operation in human history. Their mission was to capture every government building, every prison facility, and every military base on the planet. The Krillian ground forces fought desperately to defend their homeworld, but they were no match for human determination and superior tactics. Brad's soldiers had trained for months specifically for this operation. They knew the layout of every important building on the planet, and they knew exactly where the human prisoners were being held. The most important target was the Imperial Palace, where Emperor Voss and his government were hiding. The palace was a huge building surrounded by high walls and protected by energy shields. It had never been successfully attacked in the entire history of the Krillian Empire. Brad and his best soldiers reached the palace after 6 hours of fighting through the city. The Krillian guards tried to stop them, but human weapons and armor were simply too advanced. The aliens had not improved their military technology for centuries because they had never needed to. Now they were paying the price for their laziness. Inside the palace, Brad's team found something that made them even angrier than they already were. Emperor Voss had a private collection of recordings from the worst torture sessions conducted on human prisoners. The alien leader had been watching these recordings for entertainment while eating his meals. "You sick monster," Brad said when his soldiers captured Emperor Voss. "You will answer for every human life you destroyed." While the battle was raging on Krylos, human forces throughout the galaxy were simultaneously attacking every remaining Krillian facility. The operations were perfectly coordinated, with attacks beginning at exactly the same time on over 100 different worlds. Captain Ellen White led the assault on the largest prison camp, which was located on a planet called Draxis. This facility held over 10,000 human prisoners, including many who had been captured as children and had spent their entire lives in captivity. Ellen's forces broke into the prison compound. They found horrors that were even worse than anything they had seen before. The Krillians had been conducting genetic experiments on human children, trying to create a slave race that would be completely obedient to alien masters. "Get medical teams down here immediately," Ellen ordered when she saw the condition of the prisoners. "Some of these people will need years of treatment to recover from what has been done to them." But despite their injuries and trauma, the freed prisoners were overjoyed to see other humans. Many of them had believed that they were the last free humans in the galaxy. They had been told by their captors that Earth had been destroyed and that no one was coming to rescue them. "You came for us," whispered an elderly man who had been a prisoner for 15 years. "You actually came for us." The rescue operations continued for 3 weeks. Human forces freed over 90,000 prisoners from facilities scattered across the galaxy. Every single Krillian military base was destroyed, and every single prison camp was liberated. Emperor Voss and his entire government were captured alive and brought to Earth to face trial for their crimes. The trials were broadcast throughout the galaxy so that every species could see justice being done. Dr. Michelle Green, Earth's chief historian, was assigned to document the entire war for future generations. She interviewed thousands of freed prisoners and recorded their stories. She also studied captured Krillian records to understand the full scope of their crimes. "What we discovered," Dr. Green wrote in her final report, "was that the Krillian Empire had been responsible for the enslavement and murder of over 50 million sentient beings from dozens of different species. They had been terrorizing this part of the galaxy for centuries, and no one had ever been strong enough to stop them." The war officially ended when the last Krillian facility was destroyed. The alien empire that had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for over 1,000 years simply ceased to exist. Their former subjects, freed from centuries of oppression, asked to join the growing alliance of species that was forming around humanity. The memorial service for all the victims of Krillian cruelty was held on Earth 6 months after the war ended. Representatives from 47 different species attended the ceremony. Captain Jake Morrison, who had discovered the original distress signal from the Horizon, was chosen to deliver the main speech. The crew of the Horizon died as explorers. Jake said, standing before the memorial wall that contained the names of every human who had died in Krillian captivity. But their sacrifice made us into something more. Their courage in sending that distress signal started a chain of events that liberated millions of innocent beings and made the galaxy a safer place for everyone. Jake looked out at the crowd of humans and aliens who had gathered for the ceremony. "We did not choose to become warriors. We did not want to fight this war. But when evil threatened our family, we responded with everything we had. We showed the galaxy that humanity will never abandon its own, and we will never allow the innocent to suffer while we have the power to help them." The Horizon's original distress signal was preserved in the Hall of Remembrance as a reminder of how the war began. Next to it was a simple plaque with the words that had become humanity's promise to the galaxy. "Remember the Horizon, never again." In the years that followed, "Remember the Horizon" became more than just a memorial phrase. It became humanity's commitment to protecting all innocent life throughout the galaxy. The species that had once been peaceful explorers had become the galaxy's guardians, ensuring that no other empire would ever again be allowed to terrorize the weak and defenseless. The Krillians had thought they were harvesting easy prey. Instead, they had awakened humanity's greatest strength, the absolute refusal to abandon family, no matter how far away they might be or how powerful their captors might seem.